Welcome everybody. Today, the next in my Index Card a Day series, and this time we're using stencil butters, but we're not putting it through a stencil. We are going to paint with them. So I have all the prompts from Daisy Yellow's Index Card a Day challenge, and I am working off of week 3. When they inspire, that's when I do them. I don't worry about doing them in order. Now, tranquility is the prompt, but that could be a seascape, a mountainscape, the cosmos. It could be a lot of things to a lot of different people, and that's all right. It's just pointing you in a direction. I went outside, I saw my beautiful lavender. I thought that's tranquility to me. These are pictures from my garden. So I decided to go with lavender, tying into the tranquility prompt. And I grabbed this stencil. It's a slimline stencil from the Crafter's Workshop called Lavender in a Jar, but you don't have to just use it for slimline cards. I'm going to use it on an art journal page here. Now I'm working on a card base, so it measures approximately 5 by 7, and I'm putting it in the pouch to protect previously finished iCads. Now I want a dark background, but I don't want, at this point I didn't want to go completely black. So I am mixing Prussian blue with phthalo green, and that's going to make a dark navy, as you can see. Now I don't usually go with a dark background, so this is pushing me out of my comfort zone, and it causes a little bit of upheaval as I go through the process. When you try something new, it doesn't feel comfortable. And so when you're looking at it, you know, is it because it's new, or is it because you missed something or not done something? So I'm just mixing those two paints on a makeup sponge on top of the card base, which I've put a coat of gesso on. That helps the paint blend. And I'm loving the mottled look of this. This looks like a sky before there's a thunderstorm. There's lots of interest in there because I've just kind of slapped the paint on with the makeup sponge. And in of itself, I like it right now. Now I'm taping down the Lavender in a Jar stencil. I'm putting it a little bit off the page because I like that look. And I'm taping it down so it doesn't move, because I'm going to do the whole thing. I'm going to stencil on there. And I'm using just white acrylic paint. I think that wants to show through. Now I'm using the stencil here not as the finished product, but as the base for painting on. I'm going to overpaint the stencil. So I just want to get the basic outline of the lavender onto my background. So if you can't draw, this is a great way. Use stencils as the jumping off point and then overpaint them, then make them your own. But you don't have to worry about drawing all of them and deciding exactly how to get it down there. This artist has done it for us. I'm putting the paint on a makeup sponge, and as you can see, I'm tapping off on my glass mat so that I don't want a lot of paint on the makeup sponge, and I don't want it to swish underneath the stencil. I do want this to be as precise as possible. So tape it down, tap off, and go slow. Apply a couple lighter layers to build up the opaqueness of the paint, as opposed to trying to do so much in one stop. I think if you're having problems with the paint seeping under the stencil, try any of those things and it might help. I'm kind of peeking under. I don't have quite as much coverage here, so I'm just going to add a little bit more before we move on to the next step. Now I kind of am liking it right now, just the white on the black. Now if I had a blue background here, I'm thinking that would show up a little bit bluer, not as dark, not as black. But again, because I went out of my comfort zone, trying something new, I'm uncertain about whether I like it or not. And sometimes you got to do something more than once to feel comfortable with it. Here I'm just adding more lavender fronds to my composition. And I'm just isolating the one. You could tape off the others if you want it. I'm just putting one here, one there, just adding a little bit more to fill it out and make it my own. Now, lavender foliage is kind of grayish, so I'm using Hooker's Green and I'm mixing in gray with it. So I'm toning it down. You could put black and a little bit of white if you want it. And I'm going to, kind of get that color that my lavender is. I have real life lavender in my house, in my yard. And so I'm just getting that. And I'm using a liner brush here, thinning the paint slightly. And then I'm going to paint the stems and the leaves this color. Now, there's the white underneath that I stenciled. I'm okay if a little bit of that white shows through. In fact, it looks like highlights and actually makes it really easy. I'm just going over top of it, even sometimes adding to it, right? It doesn't have to be identical to what's there. You can tweak it, add your own personal flair. Just go little by little, step by step. And hopefully you can see how that white is still showing through, the white that I stenciled. I'm loving how this is looking and coming together, but I'm still uncertain about the dark background. So now I grabbed out some stencil butters from the Crafter's Workshop. Now, typically you put the stencil butters like modeling paste through the stencil. I'm not going to do that, but I am going to use 4 of them, and I'm going to use them, and I'm going to paint with them. And I have 4 colors: eggplant, fuchsia, denim, and I believe the last one is hydrangea. What I'm going to do is put a little bit of each color onto my craft table, and then I'm going to be sure to close the lid. You don't want the product to dry out, so making sure that it doesn't sit open will improve its longevity. So I've got all those 3 colors, and again I'm using my liner brush, and I'm just kind of dabbing on different colors. Each time I go, I grab some eggplant, then I grab some denim, then I'm grabbing some fuchsia, and I'm painting the lavender flower with that. That's giving a very mixed, colorful, lavenderish, like, hopefully you agree, color to the stalks. And again, if a little bit of the white is showing through, that is just adding to it. Because the stencil butters are like modeling paste and very dimensional, this is also adding texture. So while the leaves and the stalks are flat, this is adding texture, which I really like. And you're going to see once I show a close-up of this what it looks like. I was very happy with how this was coming together. And mixing those colors really added to it, because if you look at my lavender, it's got a mixture of colors in it. And I always find everything, a background, the focal image, if you have a blend of colors, it's better than one solid color. And there you can see some of the texture and the colors. So I'm just going to continue adding this, speed up the video a little bit, And I'm just dotting it on, rotating through the 3 colors that I have here. If you're looking to buy Stencil Butters, there is a link to the TCW store below as well. I know Ninny's Napkins carries the Stencil Butters as well. They have this pearlescence to them that I love, and in this case, on this project, it really adds to it. So then I go and I get more as I need it. For me, adding the fuchsia here really added to it. That little bit of extra brightness. Originally, I was just going to use the eggplant and the denim, but I'm glad I expanded it to it. Now, if I have any excess stencil butter here, don't put it back into the containers. If you have too much, take something, stencil through it, spread it on a paper and use it in some other project, but don't put it back in there because it's dried out. It's been exposed to the air and you don't want to contaminate the good stuff that's in there. So there we have it. Lots of texture, beautiful colors, but I still don't know about that background. So I am actually making it darker. There's not enough contrast there. Something about it isn't working for me, and I don't even know how to verbalize that. But I thought, okay, I'm going to get it darker, so I'm pretty much going in with straight black now. And it's giving me a little bit more contrast, and I'm a little bit happier. But I continue to play with the background, as you'll see. I would totally do this again with a light background. I think, you know. So here I wanted to add a little bit more to the background. I didn't want it as flat, so I'm taking the black and putting it through this screen view stencil. Now it's pretty much tone on tone. So you're not getting an in-your-face pattern, which I don't want. I don't want it to compete with the lavender. I want the lavender to be the star of this page. And I like what happened here. The tone on tone, you know, it's just slightly darker, adds to the background, makes it a little bit more interesting. It just looked so boring before. Just removing some paint that I got on my white stenciling of the jar. Then I decided I want something more. So I'm using white paint on my script stamp and stamping onto the black. Now, I'm loving the addition of the pattern to the background, but this stamping with the script is a little too forward. It's competing and taking away from the focal image. So I do take that black paint, a wash of black paint, and just go over it, and it pushes it back just enough. So that's a good trick. You know, if an element on the page is competing with your focal image or is just too forward, you can always do a wash of white paint or black paint or whatever color and knock it back so it's not so predominant. And then when I use my stamps, I always clean them with my Murphy's Oil soap. Also clean the rims and the edges of your stencil butters and make sure they're tightly sealed. If you don't close them, air can get in and then you've lost your product. Now this hydrangea is this beautiful hydrangea color with a hint of blue, and I am using it to add highlights to my lavender stalks, and I'm just dotting it on a bit here and there, and I love how this worked. It just added the right amount of highlights and shimmer and added another layer of texture to my lavender stalks. I'm not covering the whole stalk. The colors that I have there with the other stencil butters is still very predominant, but this is just adding, it's like it's being highlighted by the sunshine. And if I look at my lavender, you know, some of it's white or gray, and that's what this is kind of mimicking. So a good thing, if you're doing lavender, you know, either go in your garden if you've got lavender, look at it. What does it look like? Or bring up a picture on Pinterest of lavender or whatever you're painting, and use that to guide your color choices and your decisions. Here I've just sped it up, and I just keep adding that little bit of highlight to the stalks, and it really made such a difference again. Love, love, love. So now I'm going to outline. Because I have a dark background, I'm going to outline with my white Posca pen. Just to give it a bit of a border here. Normally I edge a page with a dark color, but I can't edge the page here. I guess I could have edged it with white. Maybe that would have made a frosty look around it. Next time. So if you were following the prompt Tranquility, what would your picture look like? What is the tranquil place for you? So there we get, oh, look at the close-up. Hopefully you can see the texture, all the colors as I painted with the stencil butters. So now I'm going to grab my letter stamps and spell out a phrase. And I've got letter stamps in different sizes. This, of course, is a 5x7, so it's fairly small. So I'm just going to say, just relax, to go with the tranquility theme. And you can see here I've pushed back the script. It's still there, but it's not so forward. And I clean off the stamp with a baby wipe right away. And I always have a baby wipe at hand, because if I stamp incorrectly and get it in the wrong place, I have a bit of time to erase it, wipe it off, and redo it. I have paint on my makeup sponge, so I'm using it kind of like a stamp pad there. Just relax. And I did an attempt to make it all perfectly lined up, kind of going with the imperfect. Then I decided that I am going to, I believe, use the stencil butters and water them down and use them in another way, splattering. So I just add water to it and mix it up. It takes a little bit to mix it up. And then I'm just going to splatter with it. And you get the color, and you get that pearlized look in your splatter as well. I added some of the fuchsia to this, I mixed it together, and I splattered just a little bit, which shows up so well on a dark background, on a black background. Anything with pearl really shines and shimmers off a dark background. But I wanted a little bit more of that pink in there, so I'm just going straight in with pink, thinning it out, and splattering with the pink. Thank you so much for joining me. If you like my videos, give me a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel, tell your creative friends. Until next time, just relax and get creative.